Lily Evans had always been the strong one. Through all the trials life threw her way, she managed to keep her head above water until now. The loss of her mother, the stress of work, and the crumbling relationship with her fiancé had finally broken her. Her world was now a constant haze of gray. When her therapist, Dr. Myers, suggested trying a new medication called Serenify, she didn't hesitate. He assured her it was a cutting-edge antidepressant with rave reviews from patients and minimal side effects. Desperation clouded her judgment, and she took the prescription without question. Anything to escape the numbness that had taken hold of her life. The first dose of Serenify was unremarkable. Lily expected a change, something drastic to shift within her, but it didn't come. She told herself it was too soon and tried to be patient. However, that night, she experienced the most vivid dream she'd ever had. She was walking down a dark hallway. The walls were damp and cold, echoing with distant whispers that grew louder with each step. At the end of the hallway was a door. As she reached for the handle, she felt something icy grip her wrist. She jolted awake, gasping for air, her heart pounding in her chest. The next morning, Lily tried to shake off the dream as just a side effect of the medication. But as the days passed and the dreams grew more intense, she couldn't ignore the creeping sense of dread that began to seep into her waking life. Shadows seemed to linger just out of sight, and strange noises echoed through her empty apartment. She noticed subtle changes in her reflection, fleeting moments where her image in the mirror would blink when she hadn't, or smile faintly before returning to a neutral expression. It was as though her reflection had a mind of its own, a dark secret it wasn't sharing. The dreams became nightmares. In one, she found herself in a decaying mansion, surrounded by portraits with eyes that followed her every move. The air was thick with the stench of rot. She could hear footsteps behind her, but every time she turned around, there was nothing there. Then, the walls started to bleed. Each night brought new horrors. A room full of people with hollow eyes staring at her. A forest where the trees whispered her name. A mirror that showed her a version of herself twisted with rage and despair. She woke each time drenched in sweat, the taste of terror lingering in her mouth. Lily began to feel like she wasn't alone. A shadow in the corner of her eye, a cold breath on the back of her neck. These sensations haunted her day and night. She started to question her sanity. Was this all just in her head, or was something truly following her? She visited Dr. Myers, but he dismissed her concerns, attributing them to stress and the medication adjusting in her system. He advised her to continue with Serenify and assured her that the nightmares would fade, but Lily wasn't so sure. One night, she woke up in her dream to find herself standing in her bedroom, but something was wrong. The room was bathed in a sickly green light, and there, sitting on her bed, was a woman who looked exactly like her except for the eyes. They were dark, bottomless pits, devoid of any emotion. The other Lily smiled, a twisted grin that sent shivers down her spine. "You can't hide from me," it whispered in a voice that wasn't hers. "I'm always with you." Lily's waking life became a blur of fear and paranoia. She could no longer distinguish between reality and the nightmares that plagued her every moment. The other Lily appeared in mirrors, windows, and even in the reflections of strangers' eyes. It mocked her, laughed at her fear, and whispered dark thoughts into her mind. She tried to stop taking Serenify, but the withdrawal was brutal. The nightmares became even more vivid, the other Lily more aggressive. It was as if the medication had opened a door in her mind that she couldn't close. Lily began to lose time. Hours would vanish, and she would find herself in places she didn't remember, going to dark alleys, abandoned buildings, and once, standing on the edge of a bridge, looking down at the swirling waters below. The other Lily was always there, just out of reach, coaxing her closer to the edge. She started keeping a journal, trying to track the lost time, but the entries would sometimes change overnight, written in a handwriting that wasn't her own. They spoke of things she couldn't remember doing, dark deeds that filled her with horror. Lily's nightmares began to point her toward a specific location, a decrepit old house on the outskirts of town. She could see it clearly in her dreams, and one day, she found herself standing in front of it, unsure of how she got there. The other Lily was waiting for her inside. The house was exactly as she had seen in her nightmares, down to the smallest detail. The walls were covered in mold, the air thick with decay. She could feel the presence of the other Lily growing stronger with each step she took inside. In the heart of the house, Lily found a room that seemed untouched by time. The air was still, and the shadows were deep. In the center of the room stood a mirror, and in the mirror stood the other Lily, grinning that same twisted grin. "Why are you doing this?" Lily demanded, her voice trembling. The other Lily's grin widened. "Because you invited me in. You took the pill, and now you belong to me." Lily's mind reeled as the other Lily began to speak in her voice, revealing the true nature of Serenify. It wasn't just a medication, it was a doorway, a portal to another dimension where dark entities waited to feed on the despair of the living. By taking the drug, Lily had allowed one of these entities into her mind, and now it was taking over. The other Lily stepped out of the mirror, becoming solid, real. "There's no escape," it hissed. "You are mine." Lily realized she had only one choice left. She had to fight back, reclaim her mind, and banish the other Lily before it consumed her completely. But how? The entity was powerful, feeding off her fear and despair. In a moment of clarity, Lily remembered something Dr. Myers had said, a phrase that had seemed insignificant at the time, but now felt like a lifeline. "Your mind is stronger than any medication." Lily closed her eyes and focused, pushing back against the darkness. She imagined a bright light, a force of pure will, and directed it at the other Lily. The entity screamed in rage as the light engulfed it, shrinking back into the mirror. When Lily opened her eyes, she was alone. The house was silent, the mirror shattered into 1,000 pieces. She had won, but at what cost? The nightmares might be over, but the scars remained. Days passed, and Lily tried to return to normal life, but something had changed within her. She could feel a lingering darkness that refused to fade. The other Lily was gone, but its presence still haunted her. She stopped taking Serenify, opting for natural remedies and therapy instead. But every time she closed her eyes, she feared that the nightmares would return, that the entity would find a way back into her mind. Just as Lily began to feel a semblance of peace, she noticed something unsettling. It started with small things, a shadow that didn't belong, a reflection that lingered along. The signs were subtle, but undeniable. The other Lily was trying to return. Panic set in as Lily realized that she wasn't safe, that the entity wasn't gone, it was merely biding its time, waiting for the right moment to strike. She became obsessed with finding a way to permanently banish the other Lily before it could reclaim her mind. Lily's search for answers led her to old books, obscure websites, and strange rituals. She became isolated, cutting off friends and family in her quest to rid herself of the entity. The more she delved into the dark arts, the more she felt the other Lily's presence growing stronger. She tried everything: exorcisms, spells, even self-harm in an attempt to weaken the entity. But nothing worked. The other Lily was always there, just out of reach, mocking her efforts. In her desperation, Lily found a ritual that promised to sever the connection between her and the entity. It was dangerous, requiring her to confront the other Lily in a place of power, but it was her only hope. She prepared for the ritual, gathering the necessary ingredients and practicing the incantations. The night of the ritual, she felt the other Lily's presence stronger than ever, as if it knew what she was about to do. The ritual took place at midnight, in the very room where the other Lily had first emerged. The air was thick with tension as Lily began the incantations, summoning the entity to face her. The other Lily appeared, stepping out of the shadows with a look of pure hatred. "You can't win," it hissed. "You are weak. You are mine." But Lily was ready. She chanted the words of the ritual, feeling the power surge through her. The other Lily screamed, its form flickering and distorting as the ritual took hold. For the first time, Lily felt a glimmer of hope. The ritual demanded a sacrifice, something of great value to Lily. She realized with horror that it wasn't asking for a physical object, but for a piece of her soul. To banish the other Lily, she had to give up a part of herself. With tears streaming down her face, Lily made the ultimate sacrifice. She felt a piece of her soul being torn away, leaving her hollow and empty. The other Lily let out a final, ear-piercing scream before vanishing into the void. Lily had won, but at a terrible cost. The entity was gone, but so was a part of her. She felt numb, disconnected from the world around her. The darkness that had plagued her was replaced by an emptiness that nothing could fill. She tried to move on, but the loss weighed heavily on her. The nightmares were gone, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing, that she had lost more than just a piece of her soul. Years passed, and Lily slowly began to rebuild her life. She found new ways to cope, new ways to fill the void. But one night, as she was brushing her teeth, She noticed something in the mirror, a flicker of movement that wasn't her own. She stared at her reflection, her heart pounding in her chest. And then she saw it, a faint, twisted grin that spread across her face, one that she hadn't made. The other Lily was back. As the darkness closed in around her, Lily realized with a sinking dread that she would never be free. The entity had never left it, had merely been waiting, biding its time, and now it was ready to take what was rightfully its.